Let me start off by saying it took a lot of convincing to even share my story. I don't know what to feel. What I do know, as of typing this, is that the activity is ramping up tenfold. I'm wary of sharing any actual names, including my own, as you might see why. And before you go off, immediately writing this off as someone high on something, trying to make up a poor ghost story, I assure you I'm not. This is my story, one that myself and 3 others have experienced. I'm not here to convince you of anything. I'm only here for 2 reasons: to see if anyone has had the same experience, and to find out if anyone can help me get rid of this thing. So, with all that out of the way, let's start. I will name myself X. I was 21 at the time of this incident. I am now 22. I worked many different jobs, mainly in the food industry. My father was part of the HQ staff of a security company that still operates today. Eventually, I decided to try my hand at something completely different: security. I worked for the company for about 8 months as a level 2 officer, and after about a year, I moved up to level 3. Level 3 officers are authorized to carry and handcuff, according to company and client policies. I was assigned to my first post as a level 3 officer at a hospital in San Antonio, Texas. I won't give out the name. I worked at the hospital for about 3 months before I learned there was an abandoned section of the building. I was offered a tour. Before I go further, I should explain who was with me upon entering that section. First up is Agent Y. Agent Y was a former Secret Service agent who retired and eventually ended up at the security company I worked for. Next were Marine 1 and Marine 2. As the names suggest, both were former Marines. Marine 1 was an infantryman who fought in the Battle of Fallujah and continued to see action for another 6 years before leaving the military. Marine 2 was a former drill instructor. I'm sharing this to emphasize that these people were not just some random security officers off the street. In fact, about 70% of the company was made up of former military or law enforcement personnel. Agent Y was my site supervisor. Since each location needed a designated supervisor, he was also the main security supervisor for the hospital. Agent Y, Marine 1, and Marine 2 all went with me to tour the abandoned section. We each had our own flashlights, and we explored the entire building without incident, until we reached the ICU. I swear, even typing this out, I feel sick. This will haunt me until the day I die. We reached the ICU, where the hallway split into a 3-way fork. Each hall had a small connecting passage linking them together, running parallel to each other. We decided to take the far left hallway first. The plan was to walk all the way down, circle back, and take the next hallway. If it weren't for what I was about to experience, I would have been almost entranced by the abandoned medical equipment, left to rot in eerie silence. We reached the end of the first hallway, and just before we could turn around, something changed. Agent Y was the first to notice that Marine 2 had frozen in place, fixated on a doorway. When we all turned in the direction he was staring, I was instantly overcome with nausea. I felt like I was going to violently throw up. Then the smell hit us, rotting meat. This all happened in the span of about 3 seconds. When we all faced the doorway, we saw it. It was peering at us from the top of the door frame. I need to step away for a moment. It was staring at us from the top of the doorway. But what unsettled me the most, what still keeps me up at night, were its eyes. I would have expected normal eyes, even glowing ones, but instead I was met with voids, pitch black emptiness where its eyes should have been. Marine 1 was the first to run, followed by Marine 2. I took off next, my heart hammering in my chest. As I was running, I realized that Agent Y was already ahead of me, sprinting at full speed. For some awful reason, I felt compelled to turn around to see if it was following us. It wasn't running, it was floating toward us. From here, I don't remember much. My brain shut down from fear. But what I do know is that a few months later, the abandoned building was demolished. I wish the story ended here. I desperately wish that was the end. But it only got worse. 3 weeks after the building's demolition, Agent Y was found dead. The official report ruled it as a suicide. A few days later, Marine 1 also died under unknown circumstances. I tried to move on with my life, to ignore what I saw, to pretend none of it happened. But I still see that thing, always in the corner of my eye. I fear I'm next. If anyone has advice, I need to hear it. 5 days ago, I finally brought in a priest to perform an exorcism on my house. The entity was pushed back temporarily, but it eventually returned, stronger. Worse, it didn't just target me anymore. It started tormenting Marine 2 as well. It seems to have focused its anger on them the most. This is starting to sound more and more unbelievable, even to me. But I swear I wish this was all just a sick joke. God, I wish it was. Thank you for your feedback, but I can't take it anymore. It's getting worse every single day. It won. I grew up in southern Pennsylvania, not far from Gettysburg. When I was 8 years old, my parents decided to build a beautiful house on a vacant property surrounded by fields. I lived with both of my parents and my 2 older brothers, who were 15 and 17 at the time. Though I grew up in the area, we only stayed in this house for 4 years. My first night there was not what I expected it to be. I was lying in my bed and had just closed my eyes. Then I heard a voice that sounded like a soft whisper about 6 inches from my face say, "Help," over and over, just repeating the same word until I fell asleep. I tried my best to forget about it because I thought there was no way the house could be haunted. It was brand new. About a month went by, and I was sitting on my bed doing what I used to love doing most, which was reading. I glanced up and looked at my doorway because I saw something out of the corner of my eye. At that moment, I had officially seen a full-body apparition of what appeared to be a soldier from the 1800s, but he didn't see me. He was just walking by my room very slowly. I still remember every detail of his appearance 20 years later. He was covered in blood and looked like he had been shot or stabbed. This lasted for about 5 seconds. Still creeped out my curiosity for the best of me, and I walked out of my room and searched all over the house, but found nothing unusual. About a week or 2 goes by, and I'm in my bed trying to fall asleep yet again, only to be disturbed before I even had the chance to close my eyes by this voice that was very deep and masculine. I couldn't understand a word it was saying, because it was speaking in a different language. It sounded annoyed and angry. It happened every night at the exact same time for 2 weeks, before it suddenly stopped. After that, I had a night terror. I am absolutely terrified of spiders. I had woken up in the middle of the night. I could see what looked like a tarantula crawling on me in bed. I swear it was there. I definitely saw it. I was panicking. My dad came into the room to check on me and found out everything was okay. Before I could fall asleep, I heard what sounded like 2 men laughing right next to my bed. At this point, I was getting used to fucked up shit happening. One summer, I stayed up late every night so I could watch Hannah Montana at midnight. One night, when the clock struck midnight, I heard my back door downstairs open, and then I would hear a woman say my name as if she were calling for me. I'd hear the door shut, followed by footsteps. Then there would be silence. It happened every night for almost 2 months. It never failed. It didn't even bother me at that point. I knew it wasn't my mother, because she worked 12-hour night shifts at the hospital almost every night. There were no other females around, but one night it stopped altogether. I was up at midnight and nobody had called my name. I went to sleep and everything felt peaceful. I woke up to the sound of someone knocking on my bedroom door. I looked at the clock on my cable box. It was 3 a.m. I assumed it was one of my brothers and told them to go away. But then the doorknob started turning, but it wouldn't open because the door was locked. I have always slept with my bedroom door open. Always. And I definitely wasn't the one who locked it. The knocking and doorknob rattling went on for what felt like forever. Then it stopped. A few minutes later, I hear what sounds like scratching at the door. I think to myself, WTF? Is it my cat? But then the knocking, scratching, and turning of the handle started happening at the exact same time. No way in hell my cat could do all three at once, let alone the knocking and turning my doorknob. It would happen for about 30 seconds, then it would stop. It happened at least 5 times. Sometimes the knocking would be so hard it sounded like pounding, and my whole door was shaking. Whatever was on the other side of that door really wanted to come in. It got so bad, it woke my dad up. He heard all of the commotion, and as soon as he opened his bedroom door, it all stopped instantly. He called out to me, but I was too afraid to say anything. He went back in his room and closed the door, but the same scenario repeated itself 3 more times. My dad made me sleep in his room. We never spoke about it ever. Things seemed to be fine for a while. Then whatever was in my house struck again. My brother had got up to go to the bathroom. He turned the hallway light on and noticed my bedroom door was closed, as it was across the hall from the bathroom. He comes out of the bathroom and the hallway light is off and my bedroom door is wide open. He looked inside my room and saw me still sleeping. Everyone else in the house was sleeping. He woke my dad and my brother and told them what had happened, and they searched the house for a possible intruder, but found nothing. More months go by, and we are all awoken by our smoke detector going off in the middle of the night. We all went downstairs in a panic just to find out that our stove was on. Full blast. Big ass flame on top of the stove. In the middle of the night. Yudef? One day, it was just my father and I. My mum was at work as usual, my oldest brother was at work, and my other brother was at baseball practice. I'm downstairs, but I hear what sounds like somebody running upstairs. Forgetting that both of my brothers aren't home, I go up the stairs and see someone run into my brother's room and slam the door. It was loud. I thought for sure it was my brother, and I wanted to go in there and see what he was up to and why he would be running around like that. I opened the door and nobody was there. I watched the door close right in front of me. I felt sick to my stomach, just standing there realizing the only other person that was home with me was my father, who was in the shower. I continued to see weird shit all of the time. One day, in the middle of the day, I saw my German Shepherd run upstairs full blast, as if she was chasing something, but I didn't see what she was chasing. Whatever it was went under the bed, and she was viciously growling at it. I thought it was my cat, until I saw him sitting on top of the bed, who appeared to be sleeping, until we burst in. One night, my cousin was spending the night. We were walking through the living room when she saw the reflection of another person on the glass of our big bookcase. Another time, we were in my backyard, and she told me she saw somebody looking at us through the window on a few occasions, and it definitely wasn't anybody we knew. My brothers almost never had friends over, so that was not a possibility. I remember one day, I was walking down the basement stairs. When I got to the bottom of the stairs, I saw what looked like another apparition. except the apparition looked exactly like my oldest brother, but it also didn't look human. It was almost white and blue, and his eyes were pure black. When he saw me, his eyes got really big, and he looked terrified and ran away and went into the crawl space. I ran my ass upstairs to find out my brother wasn't even home. I never went back down there after that. A few months later, I was with the same brother, and we were in the living room watching George Lopez late at night. I'm into the show, but he muted the TV. He looked at me and said, "Did you hear that?" I told him no, I didn't hear anything. We sat still for a minute, then I heard it. Together, we both heard footsteps coming up the basement stairs. My brother grabbed a baseball bat and we went to the basement to investigate, but to no avail. The rest of our family was sleeping upstairs. The next night, my mom was up late at night, sitting at the dining room table, doing whatever it was that she was doing. Around 3 a.m., the shelf in the dining room wall flew off the wall and put a hole in the wall that was adjacent to it. We looked at the nails in the wall that held up the shelf, and they were still perfectly straight. We moved out of the house when I was 12. I still experience paranormal things, but not anything that comes close to what we dealt with in that house. I believe there were a lot of spirits there, and I'd love to know about what happened there previously to cause so much activity. We were a regular church-going family, so I'm sure if there were anything demonic there, it just pisses it off even more. What do you think it could have been? Ghost? Demons? Poltergeist? All of the above? What's your story? It was 2008. My daughter, 16, now 31, was an all-star cheerleader, which meant we traveled for competitions across the US. We were living in Maryland at this time and headed to Ohio. I decided to drive instead of fly. It was way cheaper. We would first drive 8 hours or so, cross the border into Ohio, and stay in a hotel. Then we'd get up early and drive 2 hours to Comp. The hotel was only a few years old, Marriott, and as soon as we entered the room, my daughter looked around, headed to the bathroom, walked out, and said, "I don't like this room." So of course I'm Mom and mention how new the hotel is. It was nice and clean, but honestly, I didn't get it. I couldn't understand why she didn't like it, because that's all she said several times. Anyway, we went to eat and came back to go to bed. Again, she says she doesn't like that room, and I'm thinking, teenagers. And oddly, she's using the bathroom with the door open, telling me not to walk over. Again, teenagers. As usual, I watch TV until I fall asleep, and she is already sleeping. I wish I could fall asleep that fast. Later, I turn off the TV as sleep is headed my way when I hear her rustle in those new, crisp sheets. Then again, it was loud, crisp, almost like a whoosh sound. I figured she was pulling those tightly tucked sheets out. I'm lying on my left side, her bed on my right, when the whoosh happens again, loudly. So I turn to see what she's doing when I hear the whoosh going straight up between our beds, crisp as can be. And there, between our beds, is what I think is my daughter, standing with the sheets over her head. I'm like, what the heck is she doing? I quickly realize it can't be her, because it's almost to the ceiling, and there's nothing under this sheet-like human structure, when suddenly it drops into the floor fast, making a swooshing sound, as it did with a rippling effect, all of the white plummeting down. I was so freaked out. I sat up super fast, trembling, scared, confused, turning the light on, and there was Christine, sleeping in her bed. I didn't know what to do. I turned the TV on, and when it was fully illuminated, turned off the light as it was starting to wake her. I was frozen in my bed. There was no way I was getting out of it to look around, and at that point, the TV would stay on all night. I was so scared, my heart pounding and my breath erratic. It took a while to calm down. I stayed awake a long time, my eyes constantly surveying the room. When I finally fell asleep, a depression on the corner of my bed, like someone sitting down, woke me. I didn't move much, just my eyes. I was scared and very cautious. I thought maybe it was Chrissy, but nothing was there. Again, I'm awake, then fall back to sleep. Early in the morning, before the alarm would sound, I felt someone bending down to me. Like, you can feel that without hearing it type movement. And then a kiss is planted on my cheek. I froze and popped open my eyes. Nothing is there. Nothing! It wasn't my daughter. At that point, it's time to leave. So when I woke my daughter, she said something to the effect, "Good, I'm ready to go." We went to the lobby with our bags and got breakfast. It was 6 a.m. While we're at the table, she says to me that she had a terrible night's sleep. I kept her up. Now I feel bad and apologize for the TV when she asks why I kept sitting on her bed during the night, and why the heck did I kiss her cheek this morning? Excuse me? What? This happened to her too? We sat there discussing what the depression felt like. The kiss, a man, and I think she thought I was messing with her. So I tell her about the crisp sheet thing, rising and falling, when she blurts out, "I told you I didn't like this room. I knew it was bad." It was at that point that I realized why she didn't like the room. Not because she was a moody teenager, but because she felt something that I did not. She told me, when she walked into the bathroom right away, she felt as if someone died there, that they took their own life, that it was dark and foreboding, and that's why she wouldn't close the door when she was in there. But what she hadn't clarified to me was why she hated the room so much. Honestly, if she had told me, I would have changed rooms. But here's an even creepier part. After we discussed this, I saw a girl at the front desk and decided to go over and ask her if the hotel was haunted. Now this was a new hotel, but I did it anyway. The clerk said, "What room are you in?" I answered, and she stood still, looked at me, and walked away into the back room and never came out again. I mean, I stood there for 5 minutes. Nothing. We gathered our things to leave, and she still hadn't come out. When we were walking out the sliding doors, I saw her peek her head out and pop it in quickly. So bizarre. Or was she messing with me? Who knows? I don't have a lot of paranormal experiences, but the ones I've had have stuck with me. I did not feel any foreboding or darkness in that room. It simply scared the crap out of me. Chrissy definitely locked into something I could not sense upon arrival, and I've always thought of myself to be sensitive. I've told this story to many people, but Chrissy does not like hearing it at all. She won't discuss it. To her, it's over and done, but the truth is, we know it scared the daylights out of her too, which is why she won't relive it. Marriott does not own that property anymore. I looked it up on their website. Don't know why, but maybe, just maybe, too many stories have come out of that hotel. My husband was a clergyman in Bristol in the 70s. It was a poor parish by the docks. Industrial accidents were fairly frequent, and a parishioner was killed, suffering a head injury from a piece of heavy machinery. This man's family contacted my husband in great distress about a week after the funeral. He keeps coming home for lunch. Apparently, as was his habit in life, the dock worker would appear at the back door at noon for his hot meal, stomping his boots on the mat and sitting down at the kitchen table. He seemed perfectly solid and normal, except that he had a towel around his head, soaked with blood. He would sit down expectantly and then disappear, every day at noon. The family was naturally horrified and freaked out. So, research was called for into how my husband was to perform the only exorcism of his career. There's a ritual complete with a bell, book, and candle, which he performed at mid-morning the next day. He added an ad-lib of his own, along the lines of, "Look, it's time to move on. You had an accident, and you died. You don't belong here anymore, and you're frightening the girls." Midday came and went, without any phenomena, rather to his disappointment. The exorcism worked, at least for a few days. It had to be repeated when the stomping on the mat started up again, but after that, the ghost was not seen again. In 1995, I purchased about 200 acres for recreational purposes. Over the years, getting out and scouting the area, we have found 2 undocumented cemeteries. The headstones are hand-chiseled and so worn you can't even make out any words or dates, and some don't have any engravings at all. Anyhow, in 2003, I decided to build a cabin and ditch the camper setup. Ever since then, it's like I made something really angry or agitated. Since then, I have walked into the cabin and it appeared to have been turned upside down. Things turned over, things in the floor, you name it. No forced entry, no broken windows, no window locks forgotten to be locked, nothing stolen. Just really weird and totally random the times it's happened. In 2005, deer season eve, I invited some close friends to come and stay and hunt the next morning. We all got in after work 30 and planned to cook a steak, have a few beers, and just hang out and catch up. It was about 8 p.m. on a Friday night when it started. We had a campfire going out back, sitting around telling war stories. Everyone started to get hungry, so I walked inside to grab the platter of steaks. I heard a commotion out at the campfire. The grill was on the back patio, and as I walked out, one of the guys said, "You didn't have to hit John with a stick. You couldn't have just thrown it at his feet," as some chuckling ensued. I didn't know what they were talking about. I said, "What do mean?" The guy said, "Well, somebody threw a 2-foot stick and hit John right in the side of the head. It about knocked him out." I said, "Man," I walked inside to throw some seasoning on the steaks and grabbed another beer, but it wasn't me. Sure enough, though the stick was about 2 feet long and about 1.5 inches in diameter, it was a calm, cold night, with no wind at all, and no trees within 50 feet or so of the fire pit, so it wasn't a stray limb that broke off and fell on him. John said I was just standing here, with back turned to the fire, and heard a stick tumbling through the air, and then boom, hit me right in the side of the head. He said, "I didn't know what in the hell was going on, and figured it was you playing a joke or something." I said, "I swear it wasn't me." They all kind of jumped up and ran over to the grill where I was, and then they all ran inside to get their rifles, pistols, and flashlights. Someone said, "There is something in those damn woods." Well, we all eased back outside through the front door, really quietly. We got over to the corner of the cabin and came to a stop, and was just listening. You could hear the crunching of leaves from a really slow walk, and it sounded like it was about 100 feet away in the woods. We all grouped together and started walking towards this thing, and we turned on the flashlights in the vicinity of the walking sound. The woods are pretty clean in this area, not a whole lot of underbrush, so you can see good ways with a flashlight, but there was nothing, and the walking sound was still going. We are talking about 6 grown men that's been in the woods all of our lives, and we were all freaked out, to be honest with you. Anyway, we continued the night and kept our heads on a swivel, and nothing else happened, but it was a weird event, to say the least. A few years later, our kids got old enough to come hang out with us and go hunting on their own. We had a big get-together with basically the same people, plus a few more. Well, the boys wanted to walk to one of the cemeteries I previously spoke about. I guess they wanted to see how big they were. So anyway, after we ate, I told them we would all walk over there later in the night. I put my pistol on my side and grabbed a flashlight, as all the men did the same. The cemetery is about 500 to 600 yards away from the cabin, with a good wide trail through the woods. We got to walk through the woods, and about halfway there, I thought I was hearing something walking next to us that wasn't part of the group, but I shrugged it off, just thinking it was mind hearing things. Well, my buddy kinda walked up from the middle of the pack and whispered, "Who do you have in the woods?" I knew then I wasn't just hearing things. I told everybody to stop and don't move and don't say anything. John was there again and quietly said, "It's that thing from 3 to 4 years ago." Again, we all shined the flashlights into the vicinity of the crunching leaves, and there wasn't anything. It was closer this time though. Would have been really easy to see someone or an animal, but nothing. We all bolted and ran back to the cabin. To this day I don't know what it is, but I don't mess around in the woods at night any longer.